Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense, where we talk about pro wrestling and whether or not it makes sense. Oftentimes, it doesn't. Sometimes it does. We don't talk about that. We need to talk about the times when it doesn't make sense. So here we are. We're, for once in a long time, nothing crazy has happened in the world of professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just gonna spitball some stuff, kind of freeform it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did an episode on The Undertaker last week. I'm sure you've all heard it. It was really good. One of our best ever, except for all the other ones. And that got us thinking. Undertaker's a big dude, 7 foot tall. But, he's jumping off the ropes, doing the old school. You see him doing like a suicide dive.
Mm.
He used to climb up cages like it was nothing.
With a broken foot.
Right. The guy could move. Let's put it that way. And he was, a big dude. You wouldn't expect him to move that big. It's an expression over where I live. So we were thinking about who are some of the better big men in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll talk about some of the bad ones too.
Yeah.
Because God knows there's been a lot of them. But there's been some really good big guys in the business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Undertaker for one.
Yeah.
Undertaker before, so we don't need to talk about him again. But like, even you had Kane, his brother. They're definitely brothers.
Yep.
You see those two guys like facing off. They look very impressive. And Kane could work. Like, he's jumping off the top rope. I remember seeing him doing that top rope clothesline and going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Which is crazy, But he could move. Like, he could really, like, when it called for it, he could move. I thought he was I think a lot of people, whenever they hear the question, like, who's the biggest big man in wrestling, I gotta say, I imagine most people are gonna say Kane or the Undertaker. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say?
I mean, yeah, Undertaker is obviously the number one guy I'd go for, but for me, I mean, I was always a big fan of The Big Show, which sounds really weird to say, considering he's not really famous for being like a 5-star classic kind of guy. But like, when he kind of came to WWF or WWE, and he wasn't really in the best of shape, and he wasn't really listening to other people's advice and stuff, and like, for his first few years he was the drizzling shits. Mm-hmm. But he kind of went to OVW and sort of got his head on straight and lost a bunch of weight, and I think like he's had a hell of a lot of really good matches over the years with like a wide range of opponents. So he's a guy who kind of definitely grew into the role as like a wrestling giant, and he kind of became a big star because of it.
You could say he became a big show. Yeah, I know. I'll just cut all the bad jokes out. Do you remember him like doing drop kicks and stuff? He used to do drop kicks in like WCW and like the early part of his WWE career.
Yeah, didn't he do like a moonsault in WCW at one point?
I mean, moonsault's pretty generous. I mean, like, he got there. Let's just say that, I suppose. It is crazy to think about that kind of thing, but like, you're right, it was whenever he got into the WWF at the time, and whenever he was work with like Undertaker and Austin and stuff, they're like, why aren't you being more of a big man? Why don't you get it? Like, especially like, that was what Austin was saying. He's like, dude, look at me and then look at you. You should be throwing me around this ring.
Yeah.
He's like, don't make me beat some sense into you. Which is funny. And I think that's a thing that, like, It's just a little thing, but like he's supposed to move around the ring like a giant. He's supposed to be a giant, right?
Mm.
Whenever you see Steve Austin and the Big Show in a match together, the match can't be like 50-50.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
The point of that match is that Steve Austin has to overcome this hurdle of trying to figure out how to take down this big guy, the Big Show.
Mm.
It's the kind of thing that we kind of talked about. Here's my opportunity once again to slag off all Elite Wrestling. Where like the girls are fighting Nyla Rose.
Mm.
And Nyla Rose is much bigger than them, and she like as soon as the match starts, she's like down to her knees, she's on the flat on her back, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas she should be throwing these guys around.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because she's so much bigger than them, they should be working to try and knock her down more. And I think she kind of gives it up too much. She gives far too much to her opponent whenever she just needs to remember. And you can still do that stuff. Like Undertaker and Kane, for like we just mentioned, they were still pretty athletic. Bam Bam Bigelow, great talent, right? That guy could move. He was quick, but his gimmick was it's hard to take him down.
Yeah.
Right? He was quick and he needed to be quick. He didn't need to be quick all the time because that wasn't the point. The point was he was such a big, fucking intimidating dude, like the Big Show, like Kane and the Undertaker. The whole point of that match was to try and take him down, get him off his feet, do that shit. So it's just one of those things where like you need to remember like what kind of role you're playing in the ring and who you're fighting against. So I think the Big Show for a long time kind of focused more on like trying to pop the crowd with like cool, like him doing a moonsault or a dropkick or whatever. People hadn't seen that shit from a guy that size, so it's super cool. But other than that, you're like, wow, that's super cool, but you still get your ass handed to you by like fucking a guy a quarter your size.
Yeah.
It ruins the kind of like mystique about it. And then you're like, well, who gives a shit if you fucking missed a moonsault, It doesn't matter because you lost to somebody else. And like really in WCW when he started, like Kevin Nash, I think was the only guy Big Show's height.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you probably had like big Ron Reese or whatever as well, like the Yeti, but
oh yeah,
that's not really
like,
comparable.
Right, like you put Reese and Kevin Nash side by side. Like which one of these guys seems like he's going to be in the main event scene more?
The guy wrapped in toilet paper?
Well, as a mummy who's also a Yeti. Makes sense. But like the Big Show, when you saw him, when he was a giant in WCW, like they saw the kind of look he had, and they pushed him in the moon, even though he was super green. But like you said, fucking, Ron Reese, there's a guy also super green, also had a really good look, and they didn't push him to the moon.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird situation, isn't it? Why they'd go for someone like Big Show over someone like Ron Reese. Like, I don't know what their respective backgrounds were. Like, I think Big Show used to play basketball possibly before he became a wrestler. So maybe, he had some sort of athleticism built in, whereas maybe, Ron Reese didn't. But, yeah, it's a weird one, really.
I would love to play basketball against the Big Show.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why, but like I've never even thought of such a thing. But now that I know it's possible, I'm like, yeah, I'll give him a game of basketball. Great fun. I would never ever get the ball.
No.
I'm like the height of Big Show's knee,
And the thing is, he wouldn't even have to like run across the court either. He just casually stroll.
He just puts his giant arm out and catches the ball wherever it is. You're like, God damn, man, you're good. And he does a moonsault off the top of the thing, off the hoop,
He only saves that for special occasions, though.
Yeah, he's not wasting that shit on me. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Hey, speaking of moonsaults, man, you remember Vader?
Of course.
Seeing that fucking guy doing a moonsault blew my mind.
Yeah.
You're like, no fucking way. I especially like at the time, because I started watching wrestling in like 2000, where doing a moonsault was all the rage. Everybody did it. They still do. But the people doing it were always the smaller dudes, you know, the Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
Or like it's not it's even guys like Triple H or whatever, they're not doing them.
Mhm.
You know, Kurt Angle, I guess, kind of got away with it, you know. But to see a guy like Vader do it in the time he did, the early 90s, where people
Mm.
didn't really like do a whole lot of top rope shenanigans, it was crazy. Like that was insane seeing that guy go, you know? Very
Yeah.
impressive.
Well, he wasn't just the moonsault as well, but like his offense generally was just, it looked like a monster's offense should look like. It was
Yeah.
so, brutal. And I think part of the secret of that is that he was pretty much, throwing potatoes every time he was
Yeah.
hitting people, but still, like, that just gave him that aura of like, man, this is, one of the baddest men on the planet, really.
Exactly, dude. Like when you see a guy like Vader, he already gives off the aura of, you know, you're gonna get your ass beat.
Mm,
You know, like he looks like a real person in professional wrestling. You're like, that's a guy that's gonna be impossible to take the fucking belt off. Because
yeah.
look at the size of him, and then when you see him work, like he is very physical. You know, he'll beat the fuck out of you. Uh, it's intimidating. You know,
Mm,
and it brings like a level of legitimacy to it
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
because he's not like quote unquote wrestling. You know, he's no William Regal over here, but he's beating the fuck out of a guy. And you're like,
Mm,
well, it's hard to argue with that. You know, if it works, it works, and that works. Like and again, like he could do all this athletic stuff, but he only did it when it meant something. And I think we can all agree, a moonsault from Vader, like that's gonna hurt. It's
yeah.
really gonna hurt. Like you can understand that impact. You know, sometimes these days, I hate to keep slagging off modern wrestler, but like these days, sometimes they do moves and it doesn't look like they really impact, or they're just doing moves for the sake of moves. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like video game wrestling, if you will. It's just they're
Yeah.
kind of chaining moves together, and like it's hard to buy into the impact of them when people just kind of pop up all the time anyway. And then when you look at the guys doing the moves, you're like, well, you know, it doesn't look like you're really, you know, swinging for the fences, but also you're also a guy that isn't like, you know, totally buffed out. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, I don't think this is a knock on anybody because everybody does, you know, really good work. But there's a lot of like kind of slim built professional wrestlers.
Yeah. I'd say that's a fair, like, critique.
Yeah, you know what I mean when I say that, right? I'm not talking about fucking Spike Dudley over here,
No, no, no.
but like they're kind of smaller than they used to be.
Yeah.
Um, so like it seems strange to watch a guy like that kind of power through all these moves, you know, because you're like, how impactful are they? If you go back and look at a guy like Vader, who is just so imposing anyway, and then the way he hits and the way he moves and the way he just kind of throws people around, you're like, that shit looks impactful. And like you said, most of it is because he's really he's really trying to hurt the other guy, but also because like it worked. Like you can feel it
Mm.
when Vader comes down with that Vader bomb or with the moonsault. Well, you feel that. You know,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, thank God I ain't taking that. You know what I mean? Although I tell you who was really impressive, real quick. He's not really a big man, but when I saw the Blue Meanie doing a moonsault, that
Mm.
also blew my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. He's
I saw,
just got that build where it doesn't look like he should be doing any moves off the top rope.
yeah, but that's exactly it, man. I think I saw him. What was it? November to Remember '95. I think that might
Mm.
have been the first time everybody's seen the Blue Meanie because he was at ringside while Stevie Richards came out, and Stevie Richards had a match, and then he was talking to the Blue Meanie, and he beckons the Blue Meanie into the ring.
Yeah.
Have you seen this? You know what I'm talking about?
I think I saw it a long, long time ago.
That pay per view, by the way, kicks ass. I fucking love
Mm.
that show. But so Stevie's like, you know, he's got his opponent in the ground. So he's like, go ahead, do the thing. And Meanie climbs up to the top of the rope, and everybody like it's one of those little like it's a pro wrestling comedy spot, right?
Yeah.
where like it's not just like totally played for laughs, but the joke is everybody in the arena knows, look at this fat guy climbing the ropes, right? That's the joke. And then he does a moonsault perfectly. He does a really good moonsault. And so suddenly the joke is, wow, he's actually really good. You know, the joke's on us, the audience. But then because it's pro wrestling, like whoever he's doing the moonsault all like rolls out of the way. So the meanie like hits the mat hard. And so the joke's back on him. Like, oh, it's perfect. I know nobody would ever class the Blue Meanie as like one of the bigger guys in wrestling. Well, not in the way we're talking about guys like you know Kane and the Undertaker. Although I love the Blue Meanie. But this isn't about impressive moonsaults. It's about the big dudes. We'll do a moonsault episode soon, probably.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I got nothing else to do. You gotta give the people something. Oh yeah, okay. So we kind of talked about WCW with Kevin Nash a little bit. Speaking of, right? We said that they had a look at the Giant and they said we want this guy, whereas with Ron Reese, they had him packaged as the Mummy or the Yeti, who was a mummy. So like by that point, you're like, I feel like they've already given up on him and they haven't even started with this guy. You know, cut to pull back a couple of years before that, they had Kevin Nash. They had big, tall, imposing looking Kevin Nash, right?
Yeah.
The WWE would later see that. They were like, he's a big, cool dude. We'll call him Diesel. Like, and that worked because Kevin Nash is a big fucking, he's a cool dude, right? Easy. WCW, first time they got to look at him. What did they do to him?
They thought, hang on, we've got the rights to the Wizard of Oz. Why don't we dress him up in some green shit and give him a weird mask and call him Oz, the Great and Powerful?
Yep. Like, who? Why? Who would look at Kevin Nash and go, you know what my favorite film is? It's a Wizard of Oz. Like, that's insane.
It's not even what the Wizard of Oz looks like either.
Right. That's the point of the film.
Oh dear.
Well, fucking clearly nobody had seen that film.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable because it's an old film. How have you not seen it? Have you seen The Wizard of Oz?
Of course.
I don't even know if I've seen it. I tried watching it with Dark Side of the Moon on.
Oh.
I didn't get it. I got bored. Did something else. Oh well. Because they say it like syncs up properly.
Yeah, apparently so.
But I didn't understand what that meant, and then I tried it, and then I just didn't bother finishing it. I don't know how The Wizard of Oz ends. Don't spoil it for me.
Okie doke. I'll try not to accidentally let it slip.
Yeah, and almost like 100-year-old film. When did that come out? The 30s?
Yeah, I think it was like 1930 maybe or something like that.
The Wizard of Oz is almost.
Or 39, I think. Yeah.
Oh well, that's what. So it's almost 90 years old.
Yeah. Well, what year is it? Almost 80 years old. Wow. 81. Yeah.
81. Doesn't look a day over 80. So yeah, dude, like imagine having Kevin Nash there and pulling that angle, you know. That's crazy time. Although I guess WWE had Kia and they thought, I like the look of your face. Why don't I make you an evil dentist?
Yeah.
Like how would anybody fall for that?
I mean, this was the early 90s, man. There was just a lot of bad gimmicks floating around.
But here's the thing. Here's what I don't get, right? And I think you touched upon this before when we were talking about Britt Baker. I'm like, it makes sense why that would work as a wrestling gimmick. Like in the weird, twisted world of professional wrestling, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Because a dentist would be evil.
Exactly.
So why wouldn't he enjoy just like beating people up too? You know?
Yeah.
You know, it was ahead of their time, really. What if Kevin Nash, what if Oz and Isaac Yankem, you know, got together? Wouldn't that be a hell of a match?
Yeah.
They ever did they ever fight?
Probably not, cause well,
Yeah, because
maybe.
remember, because Nash came back a couple times. Remember?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't
I don't
know.
know. I gotta look that up, man.
Hmm.
Wouldn't that be a fucking train wreck?
Yeah.
No, I like Kevin Nash. I think he's a good dude. He's
Mm.
been in some fun matches, although admittedly some less fun matches as well.
Yeah.
But I like him as a worker. However, I want to talk about this match real quick that I'm sure I've talked about in the show before. But it's Kevin Nash versus Mabel, Diesel versus Mabel, I suppose. To be
Yeah.
specific.
Was it the King of the Ring or something?
I think it was King of the Ring 95.
Yeah.
No,
Sounds
no.
right.
Well, no, he won King of the Ring in 95. But if he won King of the Ring, I think this was after that.
Oh yeah. I think it
I think
must
he
have been
was the king.
SummerSlam. Yeah, that's
Maybe it
right.
was SummerSlam. Yeah, yeah. And Mabel, big dude, another big dude, right?
Mm.
What I don't know what height he was, but he was like fucking 400 pounds or something.
Yeah.
500 pounds. Do that, he's a hefty chonker, as the kids would say. I assume that's the appropriate use of that phrase. Um, and that match is, I gotta be honest with you, slightly better than I thought it was gonna be.
Really?
Slightly better. I mean, we all know, right? We don't have to watch that match. We
Mm.
all know that it's not good, right? I don't know if you've seen it before, but if you have, if you just forgot about it, if you haven't seen it, I think you can still say with confidence it's not going to be a good match, right?
Yeah, I think I must have bleached it from my memory.
Yeah, I mean it's not a good match at all, but it starts off not too bad. But the two of them start at a pretty decent pace. I'm like, all right, cool, interesting.
Mm.
And then after a minute or two of that, all that shit goes out the window. And then I can't remember what the finish was, but it was really shit. And you're like, Diesel's supposed to be your heavyweight champion. This
Hmm.
this was not a high point for either man. And also Nash said that Mabel was really, and I hate to speak ill of the dead, but he said that Mabel was really sloppy.
All right.
Yeah, he said that Mabel almost fucking, he would do the sit out hip tap thing, where he'd just sit down at your chest.
Yeah.
And it or he would do a leg drop or whatever, but he was really you know, he said he almost crushed his ribs or something.
Oh, jeez. Well,
Which
I guess someone Viscera's size, you'd think, well, that's probably bound to happen, though, isn't it?
I mean, exactly. You look at that guy; he's a big dude. Well, that kind of walks us down a little garden path of big guys who aren't so good.
Mm.
I would say Viscera, and we can. There's probably plenty more good guys to talk about, and we'll probably get to them soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, Viscera, Mabel, Big Daddy V,
Hmm.
the mascot of our Making Kayfabe show, because we talk about him all the time for some reason. But he was not so good,
Mm.
not good at all. And
Yeah.
also his name was Mabel. How do you take that guy seriously if your name's Mabel?
Well, I mean, it's not a very tough name, is it? It
It's a
sounds almost like
really
yeah, I was gonna say, you should be at home watching the Golden Girls or something.
right. He's He's knitting himself like a blanket,
Yeah.
and he's got his hair up in curlers, and he's got those little half moon glasses just down on the very edge of his nose
Hmm.
as he's watching the news. He's drinking a hot cup of cocoa, got his slippers on. Doesn't sound. I don't know where that name came from, but and this is a future episode, I imagine. It's got to be one of the least intimidating names
Yeah.
you've ever heard. And there are a
Mm.
couple. There are a couple of wrestling names where you hear them and you're like, that's not. I ain't scared of that guy. I don't even need to see his name. I ain't scared of that guy. I'm not as scared of a guy called Mabel,
Yeah.
right? Just that's ridiculous. I don't understand that one. Somebody out there, please explain why he was called Mabel, because I don't get that. We'll do, but that's a good one for another episode.
Well,
Stupid wrestling names.
I think maybe that was just a case of Vince McMahon thinking that was like a street sounding name. So he was like, yeah. I can imagine like a thug going around in the mean streets of Greenwich called Mabel.
Well, I was gonna say, like, what fucking streets is he walking down? Watch out for Mabel. Fucking Mabel. Like he's ever getting mugged by a dude called Mabel. No dudes are called Mabel.
No, that's
It's a it's a feminine name. It's not a man alive or dead called Mabel. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Mabel wasn't good.
No.
We can agree on that. Callie.
He's the obvious one, isn't he?
He is obvious. We've slagged him off before, but it's
Yeah.
you know, we should at least give him an honorable mention for just being consistently terrible. It's not a single thing that man was good at. It's unbelievable how bad he was at everything, and yet he's $1 million. He's having a great time,
Yeah.
and he didn't excel at anything.
I know.
He didn't even come close.
It gives us hope for the future, though. Surely, like if he didn't excel at anything and he's a multi-millionaire, then you know.
Oh, it's good for us.
Yeah, I mean, granted, we'll probably have to grow like a couple of extra feet or whatever, but
yeah.
You know.
I thought you meant it was good for like the wrestling business. I'm like, what? How could Khali being a success be a good thing for the wrestling business? But yeah, good for fucking bums like us. This is perfect. We'll be millionaires in no. I mean, if the great Khali can do it,
exactly,
we can do it, and we can speak English just about on par with the great Khali.
I mean, hopefully slightly better.
Dude, some days I don't even know.
Yeah.
I start talking and I'm like, I even surprise myself. I'm like, where did that come from? You know? So maybe Khali has like the brain capacity over me. I'm not sure. But I'd say I'm a better wrestler than him.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
I can definitely move quicker than he can. I can sing Happy Christmas better than he can. Do you remember that bit?
I can't say I do.
Hey, dude, Christmas is coming up, so we will do a Christmas special episode where the whole episode is just you and me watching this clip over and over again. Right? I think it was with Santino Marella because I think they did a comedy spot or a bunch of comedy spots with like Santino and Khali. You know, like, oh, that's the Odd Couple, right? I think it was with Santino, but they did this angle where like somebody and Khali came out on Christmas and they started singing a Christmas song. So like I think it was Santino would start off doing the bulk of the work. Right? Let's not cut corners here. Santino was working his ass off to the point where Khali would have like fucking 3 lines and they would all be like, you know, we wish you a Merry Christmas or something, you know, like he got the easy part as we say, and he just like Khali's his way through it, you know what I mean? Like, here comes a Christmas song. Thanks. Happy Christmas to you too. You know, like he doesn't just celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
He's like he's not. Is he? I don't think he's a Christian. He doesn't give a shit about fucking carols, right?
No.
Oh god, fucking. See, some days the WWE, they're just unbelievable. Anyway, enough about Khali. We've given him way too much attention on this one.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who I didn't used to like, and I think it was because he was super green when I started watching. And I think it's one of those like big show things that you mentioned where like they come in super green and you're a bit wary of them, but at some point like you realize they've got better and they're working their ass off, you know. And I'm gonna say Mark Henry.
Yeah, man.
There's a guy when he came in, dude. Oh god, it was a fucking chore.
Yeah.
And I believe I think it was No Way Out 2000. I seen a show with two big guys in it, who I believe it was Mark Henry for sure, and I think the other guy was Viscera. Surprise, surprise. And it was just absolutely dog shit. It was one of the worst matches I'd ever seen because there were two big dudes who, like, one of them was super green and the other one was Viscera, and they just, like, they couldn't lift each other up. They couldn't do anything. Like, it was woeful.
Mm.
Just slow paced and boring, and once again had a shitty finish because, again, like, the problem with a guy like Viscera is, like, how do you pin him to the mat, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. You have to keep coming up with shitty finishes because he can't do a good one. Apparently, you have to just and we're not wasting the good ones on Viscera. Give him the shitty finishes, you know. Um, but Mark Henry, like, he got way better, way
Yeah.
better, you know.
It's funny because when he signed with WWE originally, it was for like this massive 10-year contract.
Hmm.
And I remember, like, back in 2004, 2005, whatever it was, just like counting down the days, pretty much like hoping, I can't wait for this contract to run out so we don't have to see Mark Henry anymore.
Right, because
But
he was no good back then.
no, he had his moments. Like the whole sexual chocolate thing was pretty
Mm,
funny.
well,
I mean,
it was
yeah,
pretty funny that Vince McMahon,
yeah. But
he had a great chuckle.
if for nothing else except for the whole, Mae
The
Young
Mae
giving
Young
birth
thing.
to a hand. Yeah,
I mean,
like,
you gotta give him props for that, right?
hmm
And to be fair, he still takes that really well,
yeah.
and nobody ever forgets that.
Well,
You-
exactly.
You'll never forget that because it was what the strangest fucking thing. What? God, wrestling is weird some days, isn't it?
It's so bizarre.
Yeah, but anyway, and I think you're right. Even in 2004, 2005, like you said, he's been there 8 or 9 years.
Mm,
You see a guy there for 8 or 9 years who isn't making. The problem with Mark Henry by like 2004 is he wasn't on TV that much. So, like,
yeah.
in the early kind of part of his career, when he's working with the Nation, then he's working with like D'Lo Brown and China and stuff like that. You're like, all right, he's not great, but at least they're giving him stuff to help him improve, right?
Hmm.
Then again, it gets lost in the shuffle around 2002 to 2004 or five. Like, he's there, but he's not there.
I get the feeling he might have even been sent down to OVW for a bit as well.
Yeah, I think so. Because he was definitely wasn't like featured too prominently for a while.
Mm.
And I think, once you see him back again, I was certainly a bit wary. I'm like, well, here comes Mark Henry. But he did, he got better.
Yeah, I think I read a story from him at one point where, yeah, I think it must have been just after he'd been in OVW and they were bringing him back up to SmackDown, and he was like basically saying to Vince, like, I want to be pushed as this world's strongest man gimmick. And Vince was like, well, if you're gonna get this gimmick, we're gonna bill you as the world's strongest man. You've actually got to go out and win the world's strongest man to do it.
Mm.
So he kind of went out and like won these strongman competitions and stuff, and kind of, proved his credentials, so that when he did come back, like, they could bill him and stuff. And yeah, it led to arguably, like, the turning point of his career in WWE, when he did start looking like a serious wrestler, like
Hmm.
someone that you could take uh in the main event scene and kind of even see as like a world champion. So it's cool when he finally, everything started clicking for him, and he did, like, get that good run together. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just took a long time for it to happen.
Well, that was another problem with like the Attitude Era and their reluctance on like super quick TV matches, right?
Mm,
Because again, the problem with guys like Viscera and Mark Henry is that you can't have them lose in 3 minutes because it
yeah.
looks ridiculous, especially when they had Viscera dicking around in like the hardcore division. So you get Viscera losing to Crash Holly in like 3 minutes. You're like, we might do this one on the watch along, by the way. That's another one of our shows on our YouTube channel right now. We do like a little watch along sometimes. We watch a show. I watched an episode of Sunday Night Heat that we might do in the future. It was from 1999, and on the show on Heat is Viscera versus Christian. Right? We all know how this is gonna work, right? Christian's a good dude, but Viscera, former King of the Ring, much bigger, 3 times as big, 3 times as wide as Christian, right? Like how and this is Sunday Night Heat. None of the matches are going 20 minutes, right? How is this gonna work out? Christian wins with like a roll up.
What?
How do you roll that guy up?
Yeah.
And to be fair to Christian, he's really like trying to throw his entire weight behind it. But his entire weight behind it, like, look at Viscera, look at him. Like that shit, that looks weird. And that was what used to annoy me about watching Mark Henry matches back then, is that you'd see him lose in like 3 minutes. And you're like, how am I supposed to take this guy seriously? Because he looks awesome, but he's losing to somebody like he shouldn't be losing to.
Yeah,
and you're right. Once he became the world's strongest man, they've started to focus him a little bit more to kind of build him up to be like a legitimate, maybe not a straight up main eventer, but like to make it look like it's a big deal if you beat him.
Yes, exactly.
That was another problem the Big Show had early on in his career, in the WWF at least, is that he kind of lost a lot. So you're like, oh, well, who cares if I beat the Big Show? It should be a big deal because he's so big and intimidating. Like with Vader, right? If Vader came out, it was like, I'm a big old fucking scary dude, and then he lost to Shawn Michaels in like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shawn Michaels is the best in the world, but losing to anybody Shawn Michaels size in 4 minutes when you look like Vader or Mark Henry or Viscera, you're gonna lose respect for that guy pretty quick. You're not gonna take him as a fucking serious deal,
Yeah.
That was the problem. But I think that Mark Henry, he really he pushed through it, I think he did pretty well for himself.
You bring up a good point though with the whole how do you beat big guys like convincingly as well? Like, I think one of my favorite instances of like someone beating a big guy was I think it was I'm pretty sure it was WrestleMania 10 when it was like Bret Hart against Yokozuna. And I believe that was when Yokozuna was like, on the second rope, sort of getting ready to do the bonsai splash, and then I think he slipped and pretty much fell down and like took himself out, and Bret Hart kind of capitalized on it. So, like, that kind of covered up. So even though he lost, he's not looking like a like a complete idiot. But I mean,
right.
it kind of brings me to Yokozuna as well as like one of the better big men that was in wrestling in the mid 90s, really, because he was another guy who was like absolutely huge, but he could really move around the ring, like quite agile for his size.
Yeah, I think maybe Yokozuna is kind of like out of enough time has passed now where people don't really remember him that much.
Yeah,
which is crazy because like he was good. You were right. Like I love the way he kind of hits the rope. Like he moves. He does move with speed for a guy his size. And we're talking like Yokozuna would have been what, bigger than Mabel?
Oh yeah.
Yokozuna was
At
a
one
big
point,
dude.
I think he was like, really trying to put on weight at one point, and I think he like almost tipped the scale at about 800 pounds or something.
800 pounds.
Yeah, fuck me, man.
That
That's
is
insane.
ridiculous. Because I remember when the Big Show was 500 pounds. You're like, I can't comprehend one human being that size.
Yeah.
And he looked it. You could tell. You're like, whoa, holy shit, that's what 500 pounds is like. That's a lot, right? That's insane. That's half a ton of one man. 800 pounds, dude. And he moved better than a guy like Mabel.
Yeah.
Yokozuna was, but again, like the trick was that he was a big dude, and like you said, that angle with Bret Hart, it works in Bret's favor because he still looks like the wily kind of wrestler that he was, and Yokozuna still looks like this unstoppable monster that you could say had he not made that one mistake, Yokozuna would have won. Like that's the
e-
art, you know.
exactly. Yeah.
And then Hulk Hogan just turns up,
Yeah. That was
balls
the year
everything up.
before. That was
Was that the year before?
yeah, I'm pretty sure it was WrestleMania 9 he showed up and oh yeah, in fact that's right. I'm getting it mixed up. There was WrestleMania 9 when uh no. No, actually I think I might have got it right. Fuck it, I can't remember.
Because they did it. They did that was the thing. They did it like 2 years.
Yeah.
But the first time was ballsed up by Hulk Hogan.
Mhm.
So they were like, all right, let's appease Hulk Hogan and then figure shit out for later, you know. And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that doesn't that what does that do for Yokozuna or Bret Hart? You know, it doesn't like do anything for either of them.
Oh yeah, it was awful. The WrestleMania 9 one where Hogan shows up and kind of steals the spotlight is just ugh. But
Right.
yeah, that was
Uh,
Hulk Hogan all over.
Yeah, we'll talk about him in a different podcast. I don't even. We probably won't. Sorry to get your hopes up.
Yeah,
Yeah, dude, Yokozuna. You know, a guy, and again, like they built him up to seem to be like a legitimate threat. You know,
mm,
it wasn't just that he was a big dude. It was like he's an imposing, tough motherfucker, kind of like Vader-esque, kind of not as heavy hitting as
mm,
Vader, but he'd be that kind of toughness. Like you got a big hill to climb to beat this dude. You know, a
yeah,
legitimate world heavyweight champion. You look at a guy like Yokozuna, and you're like, I could see how that man became heavyweight champion. It's
yeah,
hard, you know,
definitely.
it's hard to beat. It makes sense. It totally makes sense. And then when you see him work, you're like, oh, I get it even more now.
Mm.
He really can go. Yokozuna's a good one, you know. Um, I feel like people these days probably kind of forget about him a little bit because, like, you know, guys like Yokozuna and guys like Diesel were in the WWF at the time whenever it wasn't really that cool to like the WWF.
Yeah,
That's the period of time when people were like, oh, that was it, the pre-attitude era, therefore it was shit, you know. Like don't necessarily agree with that, although it was the Mabel era as well, so maybe there is some truth to that.
yeah.
But you know what I mean. Bam Bam Bigelow was a little before that.
Well, he kind of covered like a few different eras, didn't he? I think he first showed up in WWE in like the late
Late
80s.
80s, I think.
Then kind of yeah, he was in and out for a little bit, and then obviously he went to ECW for a while, where he had those awesome matches with Taz and stuff, and yeah,
You see, like that shit worked because like Taz is just like he's a smaller guy, like height wise, but he's built. We talk about
mm,
this, right? He's
yeah,
thick.
yeah,
He's a thick dude. So like, but then when you put him up against a guy like Bam Bam Bigelow, you know, Bigelow was pretty tall. I don't know exactly how tall he was. He wasn't 7 foot.
no, no,
He's
I
six
think
foot something.
he definitely, yeah,
But like he still looked intimidating. The fucking tattoo on the head.
yeah,
What a genius move. Cause it made him look like he's gonna fucking kill you.
yeah,
Like people these days, they get it wrong. They get their fucking face tattooed.
mm.
No man, you want to shave your fucking head and put like loads of flames on the back of your head.
Or you could get your neck tattooed instead.
What would you get your neck tattooed with? The flag of whatever nation you were born in.
Yeah, probably, and maybe some sort of nightmare theme, or I don't know.
Can you imagine just somebody walking around England with a Union Jack tattooed to their neck?
I
Holy
mean, I
fuck.
could easily imagine that with some of the dickheads we've got around here, but yeah.
Right, but that's what I mean is that if you saw a guy with a Union Jack tattoo on his neck, you know exactly what kind of guy that is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would have said the same in America. I would have said if you seen a guy with a union or with a fucking American flag tattooed on their neck, like I'm pretty sure I can guess what kind of dude you are. I think Cody Rhodes does it. So I'm like,
Mm,
hey man, I don't want to say the You're one of those dudes, but anyway, we're not talking about Cody Rhodes and how much of a racist he is. That's slander. That's gonna get us in trouble.
Yes.
Bam Bam though, like when he was fighting Taz, like it looked great.
Yeah.
That's a
Those
great look
matches were
because right
awesome.
there you've got exactly what we're talking about. You've got Bam Bam looking like this big imposing dude who was surprisingly quick for his size, right?
Hmm.
You've also got Taz who looks smaller in comparison to Bam Bam, but still looked like he could. He was willing to give it a fight. Taz is that kind of scrappy like attitude to him where he'd fight anybody, and that works really well. Those are fun matches.
Yeah.
And then Bam Bam went to WCW in what 99 2000.
I think it was 98, sort of late 98 they went over.
Mm-hmm.
And then pretty much mixed it up with who was it? Was it Shane Douglas and no, sorry, it was
There's DDP
DDP.
and
Yeah,
Canyon.
and Canyon, that's right, as
They're like the
the
Jersey
Jersey
Triad.
Triad. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like that. I love that. I thought that was cool
Yeah.
because those guys together. That's again. There's another great idea for a future episode. But like groups in wrestling, right?
Mm.
You look at those three guys. You're like, not only do they look like a cool group, they also look like they fit.
Yeah.
They look totally like a bunch of guys that would hang out with each other.
Mm-hmm.
This totally makes sense, you know. So yeah, dude, I'm a big fan of Bam Bam.
Yeah.
I think he's one of those guys that maybe been a little forgotten these days too. And I'm like, I think that'd be a damn shame.
Mm.
You know, that guy could move.
Yeah. It's just a shame really that he died so young. Like, I
Mm.
mean, he was still what in his is he late 30s or something? Or
When did he die? 2007.
7, I want to say, yeah.
Yeah, I would have said what late 30s, early 40s kind of time.
Yeah. I mean, he still felt like he had, stuff to offer the business and everything. And I mean, you can look at Yokozuna and say the same thing because I'm pretty sure he died like mid 30s as well, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of tough for the bigger wrestlers, like the sort of wear and tear they take on their bodies and everything. Like, you see Great Khali, like he's not exactly ever been the most nimble of wrestlers anyway, but like he's always looked as if he just struggles to get around.
Yeah.
And like even like Giant Gonzalez, like you hear how he spent like the last years of his life pretty much in a wheelchair because of all the damage he'd done to himself. So yeah, it's crazy.
Well, that's the thing. That's what always like blew my mind about the Big Show. Because I remember probably by 2008, I read an article about the Big Show. Because I think maybe it was 2008. This was when he had just kind of taken a hiatus from wrestling, and we thought he was like retired. Remember there
Mm.
was a period where he left for like a long time.
Yeah.
So it was right about this time, and he was talking about like his travel and the way he works and stuff. And he's like, "Listen, man, I'm a giant. In real life, I have mild gigantism and stuff like this. So for anybody like that, Andre the Giant, you know,
Mm.
um, who we'll talk about in a second, accommodations have to be made. It's hard for him
Mm.
to get into a taxi or to get into an airplane or to do any of this stuff because people his size aren't, seen that often.
Yeah.
And it's the stuff he has to do just in his day-to-day life to maintain the kind of like schedule that those wrestlers do. And we know they're at work fucking 250 days a year,
Mm.
280 days a year. They're on the road all the time, and the Big Show has to struggle through all of it without having a seat that's accommodating for his fucking size or whatever.
Yeah.
And he also talked about how realistically people with gigantism don't tend to have like super long career. So he said at the time when he had kind of done this interview. Like I said, he was on the way out of wrestling, so he's like, I don't know if I'll come back because I don't know if I can come back.
Mm.
And he fucking not only did he come back, but he looks better than ever.
Yeah,
Big Show
absolutely.
looks fucking great. And like I said, dude, this article's got to be 10 years old, and he's still going. He's like, he's still like he could still go right now. He still looks great. It looks better than he used to do, and he's still doing all the travel, all that kind of work. Fair play to him, dude.
Hell yeah.
Fair play to the Big
Considering
Show.
his career's been like about 25 years now?
Yeah, I think
It's
it was
insane.
96, 95 and 96, was it?
Yeah.
Mm.
So, I mean, yeah, it's not very many big men have long careers, really. It's like him, Kane, Undertaker. That's about it, really, that I can think of.
Yeah, like
I don't
it's
know how long Andre the Giant's career was, but
well, Andre's career was kind of just at the end of the 80s, right at the beginning of the 90s, he was winding down, right?
yeah.
But then how long was he wrestling? Did he not start in the 70s?
He must have done, because I'm sure he was like a big star for most of the 70s
Mm.
in America and
That's
Canada
something
and
else.
everything. Yeah.
Then there's a guy like, and he took the mystique like perfectly.
Mm.
Like Andre could work better than people thought he could.
Yeah.
Like most big men, he could move better than everybody assumed he could. But he didn't have to do that.
Mm.
He could just do Andre stuff. He knew how to work the crowd perfectly, and he knew what it took to get the reaction he was looking for. So he didn't need to do like a fucking million moonsaults or whatever. Although seeing Andre the Giant doing a moonsault, I think that would be amazing.
Hell
But like,
yeah.
he just knew what to do, so he didn't have to. And that's another like really important factor when you think about those big guys, is that wrestling, whether you're a big guy or a small guy or an in-between guy or a girl, you know what I mean, is that like no matter how long you do it for, no matter what size you are, no matter what age you are or were when you started the business, like that shit takes a toll on you. It's hard
Yeah.
to do. So when you're a guy like Andre the Giant who has like gigantism and you know and doesn't can't get into airplanes easily and can't do all this shit, and also he's working his ass off and he's working every night, it's gonna take a real wear and tear on your body. And that's
Mm.
why he kind of stopped doing drop kicks and stuff like that, because one, he didn't need to, and two, like by the end of it, like he couldn't.
Yeah. And well, I think as well it's worth saying that I think Big Show had like a pituitary gland like surgery or something
Mhm.
like in the early 90s. So he like, he stopped growing essentially, whereas Andre never had that surgery, and so that kind of meant that he was still growing like the older he got, like
Yeah.
and that just increased the wear and tear on his body, on top of like all the wrestling and matches and stuff that he'd had. So yeah, that definitely didn't help the situation.
Yeah. He was awesome though. Everybody loves Andre the Giant.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm guessing you've seen that clip of him pretty much doing a pedigree like 15 years before Triple H ever did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I seen this other thing. I'd seen like a gif of him working in Japan,
Mm.
which was super cool. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just Japan, but like maybe people tend to work better over there. Because
Mm.
like Vader did great work over. Not to say Vader didn't do great work over here, but like Vader did great work over in Japan. Hulk Hogan, have you seen his matches from Japan?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
insane.
Why didn't we get that Hulk Hogan? That's not fair. Um, and then yeah, you get a guy like Andre the Giant, super over, but he was over everywhere he went.
Mm.
A big dude. And also he was in The Princess Bride.
Yay.
It is a great film.
Indeed.
Anybody else you wanna chat about real quick? Covered a lot of people.
Yeah, we have.
If you were to just quickly spitball it, who would you say is the greatest big man?
I mean, you'd have to give it to Undertaker still, just because, factor in the longevity, the quality of, some of his matches and the gimmick and everything. Like he's the total package when it comes to big men wrestlers, I'd say.
I think it's hard. It really is hard to bet against the Undertaker or Kane.
Mm,
I think the two of them both kind of. I mean, you got to say, given his longevity and the way he was, even though he kind of petered out at the end,
mm,
like one appearance per year or whatever, he still like for a long time was able to maintain a high level of
mm.
quality,
Oh yeah.
which is going to be for a guy that size is going to be pretty hard for anybody to replicate.
Mm,
There's nobody in wrestling right now that is the size of the Undertaker that could do what he has done. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like nobody right now has. They're not going to last another 30 years from this point.
Mm,
And they're not going to have the same mystique and presence that the Undertaker did. So I guess you got to say Undertaker's looking pretty good. But like we said as well, some of the other guys that we mentioned should not be overlooked. Andre the Giant for his like ability to like work a match
mm,
despite him being so much bigger than everybody else is a real key like kind of component to look at when it comes to like being a wrestler and seeing how it works. And guys like Yokozuna and Bam Bam who were like, and the Big Show as well, who were like big guys who were deceptively agile, but they knew when to work it. They knew when to
mm.
put their stuff in. That's really important too. So there's been some really good ones. Who's the worst big man?
It's got to be a toss up, surely, between Cali and Giant Gonzalez.
Oh, poor Mabel.
Uh,
He gets the worst name category at least.
yeah, definitely.
Mabel. It's still funny. Oh, ridiculous. Cool, man. If well, that's the show, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Yes, that's the show. Hey, man, if you've got anybody else you want to give a little shout out to, a little honorable mention, leave them in the comments. Plenty of big man you could talk about. Maybe we'll do another one. We talk about some other people.
Yeah.
You never know, man. You never know. But yeah, dude, remember if you like the show, leave us a comment, like, subscribe, do all that fucking whatever. You do whatever you want. I don't care. Just have fun doing it. And I guess we'll see you in the next episode. So we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.